Chapter 2. Persuasive Speeches. Objectives. To introduce speeches to enable listening and speaking skills. To introduce students to a new type of listening activity, which is persuasive speeches. To improve your comprehensive skill by answering the questions given after the speeches. Listening involves receiving sound, understanding the message conveyed in the sounds you hear, evaluating the message, and responding to it. People with good listening skills are able to comprehend what they hear and respond appropriately. Listening is persuasive because it makes the other person feel respected and understood. Listening not only enhances your ability to understand better, it also makes you a better communicator and helps you improve your speaking skills. Listen to good English speeches to improve your language and speaking skills. If you are on the path of improving your English language skills, you've probably gone through the usual routine of understanding the basic grammar do's and don'ts and read extensively on it. You are also probably putting your improved knowledge to good use while conversing with friends or family. But what if you had to speak on a platform? What if you were asked to come over onto a stage and talk about a particular topic? How would that make you feel? If this is making you feel uneasy and if you want to deliver a flawless speech yourself, it would be a good idea to listen to the best to get started. Learning by observation is perhaps the easiest form of self-learning. To get things going, we would recommend you to hear eminent personalities talk on stage on a particular topic and get to add some new words to your own vocabulary. Things to focus on would be the poise, the diction, the tone, the vocabulary and subtle nuances like the pauses and variations in body language. But if we had to isolate the takeaways that can improve your English, it would be as listed below. 1. Pronunciation. Speeches are a great way to figure out pronunciations of words. It allows you to hear the sound of the word that you had only read about. It lets you know the correct way of pronouncing a word, and this could help in your future communication. 2. Vocabulary. Speeches by noted personalities have a lot of thought built into them before they actually get spoken. So, one can expect them to use high-impact words and display a wide range of vocabulary expertise. This allows the learner to come across some, never heard before, word that could be added into his/her personal vocabulary data. 3. Tone. Another great takeaway from listening to speeches is the intonation. While all speeches are meant to engage the entire audience, you will notice the differences in the pitch and tempo depending on the type of speech you are listening to or watching. Some persuasive speeches that help the students to improve their communicative skills are given below. Listen to the audio, read the transcripts of the speeches and note the theme, tone, pronunciation, new vocabulary and their meaning in the sentence. 1. Swami Vivekananda's speech at the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago. Swami Vivekananda, 1863–1902, is best known in the United States for his groundbreaking speech to the 1893 World's Parliament of Religions, in which he introduced Hinduism to America and called for religious tolerance and an end to fanaticism. He was a renowned writer, scholar, thinker, saint, and philosopher of contemporary India. The actual name was Narendranath Dutta. Vivekananda was the name given by Ajit Singh, the ruler of princely state Khetri. Vivekananda was the chief disciple of the 19th century mystic Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and the founder of Ramakrishna Mission. What was so dazzling about the inaugural session speech is that it is just 458 words long, so could not have lasted more than 5 or 6 minutes. But the impact it created was tremendous. The words are simple and clear and easy to understand for everyone. https://www.youtube.com/watch?v=cdt8e7xmxa. The transcript of the speech. Address at the inaugural session at the Parliament of Religions. Chicago, September 11, 1893. Sisters and Brothers of America. It fills my heart with joy unspeakable to rise in response to the warm and cordial welcome which you have given us. I thank you in the name of the most ancient order of monks in the world. I thank you in the name of the Mother of Religions, and I thank you in the name of millions and millions of Hindu people of all classes and sects. My thanks, also, to some of the speakers on this platform who, referring to the delegates from the Orient, have told you that these men from far-off nations may well claim the honor of bearing to different lands the idea of toleration. I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true. I am proud to belong to a nation which has sheltered the persecuted and the refugees of all religions and all nations of the earth. I am proud to tell you that we have gathered in our bosom the purest remnant of the Israelites, who came to southern India and took refuge with us in the very year in which their holy temple was shattered to pieces by Roman tyranny. I am proud to belong to the religion which has sheltered and is still fostering the remnant of the grand Zoroastrian nation. I will quote to you, brethren, a few lines from a hymn which I remember to have repeated from my earliest boyhood, which is every day repeated by millions of human beings, as the different streams having their sources in different paths which men take through different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to thee. The present convention, which is one of the most august assemblies ever held, is in itself a vindication, a declaration to the world of the wonderful doctrine preached in the Gita. Whosoever comes to me, through whatsoever form, I reach him. All men are struggling through paths which in the end lead to me. Sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant, fanaticism, have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilization and sent whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is now. But their time has come, and I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. Address at the Final Session, Chicago, September 27, 1893. The world's Parliament of Religions has become an accomplished fact, and the merciful Father has helped those who labored to bring it into existence, and crowned with success their most unselfish labor. My thanks to those noble souls whose large hearts and love of truth first dreamed this wonderful dream and then realized it. My thanks to the shower of liberal sentiments that has overflowed this platform. My thanks to this enlightened audience for their uniform kindness to me and for their appreciation of every thought that tends to smooth the friction of religions. A few jarring notes were heard from time to time in this harmony. My special thanks to them, for they have, by their striking contrast, made general harmony the sweeter. Much has been said of the common ground of religious unity. I am not going just now to venture my own theory, but if anyone here hopes that this unity will come by the triumph of any one of the religions and the destruction of the others, to him I say, brother, yours is an impossible hope. Do I wish that the Christian would become Hindu? God forbid. Do I wish that the Hindu or Buddhist would become Christian? God forbid. The seed is put in the ground, and earth and air and water are placed around it. Does the seed become the earth, or the air, or the water? No, it becomes a plant. It develops after the law of its own growth, assimilates the air, the earth, and the water, converts them into plant substance, and grows into a plant. Similar is the case with religion. The Christian is not to become a Hindu or a Buddhist, nor a Hindu or a Buddhist to become a Christian. But each must assimilate the spirit of the others and yet preserve his individuality and grow according to his own law of growth. If the Parliament of Religions has shown anything to the world, it is this: it has proved to the world that holiness, purity and charity are not the exclusive possessions of any church in the world, and that every system has produced men and women of the most exalted character. In the face of this evidence, if anybody dreams of the exclusive survival of his own religion and the destruction of the others, I pity him from the bottom of my heart, and point out to him that upon the banner of every religion will soon be written, in spite of resistance, help and not fight, assimilation and not destruction, harmony and peace and not dissension. Glossary. 1. Persecuted. Subject someone to hostility or ill treatment. 2. Remnant. A part or quantity that is left after the greater part has been used, remainder. 3. Tyranny. 4. Fostering. Cruel and oppressive government or rule. Encourage the development of something desirable, bring up. 5. August. Marked by dignity or grandeur, distinguished. 6. Vindication. The action of clearing someone of blame or suspicion. 7. Doctrine. 8. Sectarianism. A belief or set of beliefs held and taught by a group. Excessive attachment to a particular sect or party, especially. 9. Bigotry. In religion, unreasonable attachment to a belief, opinion or faction. Prejudice against a person. Obsessively concerned with something, filled with excessive and single-minded zeal. 10. Fanaticism. 11. Assimilate. Take in and understand fully, information or ideas, disagreement that leads to discord. 12. Dissension. Classroom activity. 1. Where was the World's Parliament of Religions held? 2. The speech was delivered by Swami Vivekananda in the year. 3. The actual name of Vivekananda was. 4. Who was Vivekananda's guru? 5. What was the salutation of Swami Vivekananda's speech? 6. Which religion is advocated by Vivekananda in his speech? 7. The countries of are referred to as Orient. 8. On which day was Vivekananda's final address delivered during the Parliament of Religions? 9. In his final address in Chicago, what was Vivekananda's final appeal to the world? Answer the following questions in about a page each. 1. What was the message given by Swami Vivekananda in his Parliament of Religions speech? 2. What exactly was the main essence of the speech of Swami Vivekananda at the Chicago Conference? 3. According to Vivekananda's final address, what has the Parliament of Religions proved to the world? 4. What is the relevance of Swami Vivekananda's 1893 Chicago address in the modern times? 5. Write a note on Swami Vivekananda's views on assimilation of religions. Two. Mahatma Gandhi's speech at Kingsley Hall, London in 1931. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, often known as Mahatma Gandhi, was born in Gujarat on October 2, 1869. The father of the nation, a social reformer, and a freedom warrior, worked relentlessly to free Bharat from the shackles of the British Raj, based on the principles of ahimsa, non-violence. In October 1931, Gandhi attended the Second Round Table Conference in London to decide on the future status of India. A law student in London in the 1890s, his legal training proved an asset in the conference negotiations. In London, the Mahatma addressed a large gathering at the Kingsley Hall. He called this address as his spiritual message. Here's the famous speech by the Mahatma. https://u2.be/f55166-licky. The transcript of the speech. There is an indefinable mysterious power that pervades everything. I feel it though I do not see it. It is this unseen power which makes itself felt and yet defies all proof, because it is so unlike all that I perceive through my senses. It transcends the senses, but it is possible to reason out the existence of God to a limited extent. Even in ordinary affairs we know that people do not know who rules or why and how he rules, and yet they know that there is a power that certainly rules. In my tour last year in Mysore, I met many poor villagers, and I found upon inquiry that they did not know who ruled Mysore. They simply said some god ruled it. If the knowledge of these poor people was so limited about their ruler, I who am infinitely lesser in respect to God than they to their ruler need not be surprised if I do not realize the presence of God, the King of Kings. Nevertheless, I do feel, as the poor villagers felt about Mysore, that there is orderliness in the universe. There is an unalterable law governing everything and every being that exists or lives. It is not a blind law, for no blind law can govern the conduct of living being, and thanks to the marvelous researches of Sir J.C. Bose, it can now be proved that even matter is life. That law then which governs all life is God. Law and the lawgiver are one. I may not deny the law or the lawgiver because I know so little about it or him. Just as my denial or ignorance of the existence of an earthly power will avail me nothing, even so my denial of God and His law will not liberate me from its operation, whereas humble and mute acceptance of divine authority makes life's journey easier, even as the acceptance of earthly rule makes life under it easier. I do dimly perceive that whilst everything around me is ever changing, ever dying, there is underlying all that change a living power that is changeless, that holds all together, that creates, dissolves, and recreates. That informing power or spirit is God, and since nothing else that I see merely through the senses can or will persist, He alone is. And is this power benevolent or malevolent? I see it as purely benevolent, for I can see that in the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists. In the midst of darkness, light persists. Hence, I gather that God is life, truth, light. He is love, He is the supreme good, but He is no God, who merely satisfies the intellect, if He ever does. God to be God must rule the heart and transform it. He must express Himself in every smallest act of His votary. This can only be done through a definite realization, more real than the five senses can ever produce. Sense perceptions can be and often are false and deceptive, however real they may appear to us. Where there is realization outside the senses, it is infallible. It is proved not by extraneous evidence but in the transformed conduct and character of those who have felt the real presence of God within. Such testimony is to be found in the experiences of an unbroken line of prophets and sages in all countries and climes. To reject this evidence is to deny oneself. This realization is preceded by an immovable faith. He who would in his own person test the fact of God's presence can do so by a living faith, and since faith itself cannot be proved by extraneous evidence, the safest course is to believe in the moral government of the world, and therefore in the supremacy of the moral law, the law of truth and love. Exercise of faith will be the safest where there is a clear determination summarily to reject all that is contrary to truth and love. I confess that I have no argument to convince through reason. Faith transcends reason. All that I can advise is not to attempt the impossible. Glossary. 1. Pervades. 2. Transcends. 3. Benevolent. Spread through and be perceived in every part of. Go beyond, surpass. Well-meaning and kindly. Bene meaning good, and vel meaning to wish. Or malevolent. 5. Infallible. Having or showing a wish to do evil to others. Incapable of making mistakes or being wrong, never. Failing. Irrelevant or unrelated to the subject being dealt with, of external origin. 3. In which place did Mahatma Gandhi address a large gathering in London? 4. Mahatma Gandhi attended the Round Table Conference. 9. Is the informing power of spirit. 6. Extraneous. Comprehension. A. Classroom activity. 1. In which year was the second Round Table Conference held? 2. In the 1890s, Gandhiji had been to London to study. 5. What did the poor villagers in Mysore tell Gandhiji? 6. Gandhiji referred to God as King of. 7. What has the marvelous research of J.C. Bose proved? 8. What will happen if you humbly and mutely accept the divine authority? 10. Is the God's power of spirit malevolent or benevolent? 11. Is it enough to merely satisfy the intellect? What did Gandhiji say was the real duty of God? B. Answer the following questions in about a page each. 1. What was the main message in Gandhiji's Kingsley Hall speech? 2. What was Mahatma Gandhi's conflict, determination and resolution in his Kingsley Hall speech? 3. Discuss Mahatma Gandhi's perspectives on divine authority. 3. Steve Jobs, Stanford commencement speech in 2005. Steve Jobs, 1955 to 2011, was no doubt a great speaker. Millions around the globe were enchanted by the presentations that he gave for Apple as the company's CEO. However, he wasn't just known for speeches related to product launches. He's also known for inspirational speeches, like the one he gave in 2005 at a Stanford commencement ceremony. In this speech, he addresses the graduating students of Stanford University. He starts by saying that he never actually graduated from college. This makes for an honest and heartwarming speech. For nearly 15 minutes, he talks about his life, telling stories that are funny, relatable, and emotional. He also offers tips for students to apply to their own lives. https://youtube.be/1i9kcbhx2nw. The transcript of the speech. I am honored to be with you today at your commencement from one of the finest universities in the world. I never graduated from college. Truth be told, this is the closest I've ever gotten to a college graduation. Today I want to tell you 3 stories from my life. That's it, no big deal, just 3 stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College, Portland, Oregon, after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit. So why did I drop out? It started before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed college graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates, so everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. Except that when I popped out, they decided at the last minute that they really wanted a girl. So, my parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We have an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said, "Of course." My biological mother later found out that my mother had never graduated from college and that my father had never graduated from high school. She refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only relented a few months later when my parents promised that I would someday go to college. And 17 years later I did go to college. But I naively chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford, and all of my working-class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was spending all of the money my parents had saved their entire life. So, I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me, and begin dropping in on the ones that looked interesting. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5 cents deposits to buy food with, and I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it, and much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus every poster, every label on every drawer, was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. And we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on this calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college. But it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards. So, you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down, and it has made all the difference in my life. My second story is about love and loss. I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. Steve Wozniak, and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. We had just released our finest creation, the Macintosh, a year earlier, and I had just turned 30. And then I got fired. How can you get fired from a company you started? Well, as Apple grew, we hired someone who I thought was very talented to run the company with me, and for the first year or so things went well. But then our visions of the future began to diverge, and eventually we had a falling out. When we did, our board of directors sided with him. So, at 30 I was out. And very publicly out. What had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone, and it was devastating. I really didn't know what to do for a few months. I felt that I had let the previous generation of entrepreneurs down, that I had dropped the baton as it was being passed to me. I met with David Packard and Bob Noyce and tried to apologize for screwing up so badly. I was a very public failure, and I even thought about running away from the valley. But something slowly began to dawn on me. I still loved what I did. The turn of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I had been rejected, but I was still in love. And so, I decided to start over. I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. During the next 5 years, I started a company named Next, another company named Pixar, and fell in love with an amazing woman who would become my wife. Pixar went on to create the world's first computer-animated feature film, Toy Story, and is now the most successful animation studio in the world. In a remarkable turn of events, Apple bought Next. I returned to Apple, and the technology we developed at Next is at the heart of Apple's current renaissance. And Lorene and I have a wonderful family together. I'm pretty sure none of this would have happened if I hadn't been fired from Apple. It was awful tasting medicine, but I guess the patient needed it. Sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. You've got to find what you love, and that is as true for your work as it is for your lovers. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. And, like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. So, keep looking until you find it. Don't settle. My third story is about death. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, for the past 33 years, I have looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no, for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. About a year ago I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a scan at 7:30 in the morning and it clearly showed a tumor on my pancreas. I didn't even know what a pancreas was. The doctors told me this was almost certainly a type of cancer that is incurable and that I should expect to live no longer than 3 to 6 months. My doctor advised me to go home and get my affairs in order, which is doctor's code for prepare to die. It means to try to tell your kids everything you thought you'd have the next 10 years to tell them in just a few months. It means to make sure everything is buttoned up so that it will be as easy as possible for your family. It means to say your goodbyes. I lived with that diagnosis all day. Later that evening I had a biopsy, where they stuck an endoscope down my throat, through my stomach and into my intestines, put a needle into my pancreas and got a few cells from the tumor. I was sedated, but my wife, who was there, told me that when they viewed the cells under a microscope, the doctors started crying because it turned out to be a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that is curable with surgery. I had the surgery and I'm fine now. This was the closest I've been to facing death, and I hope it's the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can now say this to you with a bit more certainty than when death was a useful, but purely intellectual, concept. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It is life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you, but someday not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it is quite true. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And, most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. When I was young, there was an amazing publication called the Whole Earth Catalog, which was one of the Bibles of my generation. It was created by a fellow named Stuart Brand not far from here in Menlo Park, and he brought it to life with his poetic touch. This was in the late 1960s, before personal computers and desktop publishing, so it was all made with typewriters, scissors and Polaroid cameras. It was sort of like Google in paperback form, 35 years before Google came along. It was idealistic and overflowing with neat tools and great notions. Stuart and his team put out several issues of the Whole Earth Catalog, and then, when it had run its course, they put out a final issue. It was the mid-1970s, and I was your age. On the back cover of their final issue was a photograph of an early morning country road, the kind you might find yourself hitchhiking on if you were so adventurous. Beneath it were the words, "Stay hungry. Stay foolish." It was their farewell message as they signed off. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. And I have always wished that for myself. And now, as you graduate to begin anew, I wish that for you. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. Thank you all very much. 1. Calligraphy. The art of producing decorative handwriting or lettering with a pen or brush. 2. Typography, the style and appearance of printed matter. 3. Renaissance, a revival of or renewed interest in something. 4. Dogma, teaching, belief. Comprehension. A. Classroom activity. 1. How many stories did Steve Jobs narrate to the students during the commencement address at Stanford University? 2. Steve Jobs had joined college to do his graduation. 3. Steve Jobs' biological mother was a young unwed college graduate student. True or false? 4. Why did Jobs decide to drop out of college? 5. After dropping out of college, which class did Jobs decide to take? 6. The world's first computer-animated feature film was. 7. Steve Jobs' second story to the students was about. And 8. Jobs started Apple when he was at the age of 20. True or false? 9. Steve's partner with whom he co-founded Apple was. 9. Name the companies started by Jobs after he was fired from Apple. 10. What is the name of Steve Jobs' wife? 11. When Steve was 17 years, a quote that he read made an impression on him. What is it? 12. Steve Jobs was suffering from cancer. 13. The doctor's advice of getting the affairs in order generally means. 14. The amazing publication, The Whole Earth Catalog, was created by a fellow named. 15. What was Jobs' farewell advice to the audience? B. Answer the following questions in about a page each. 1. Why did Steve Jobs decide to drop out of Reeds College? 2. Steve Jobs' adopted parents had promised his biological mother that they will send him to college. What prompted them to do this? 3. Connecting the dots in Steve's life, how can you say that dropping out of Reeds College proved advantageous to his career? 4. How did Jobs use his knowledge of calligraphy while designing the Mac? 5. Getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have happened to Steve Jobs. Elucidate the statement. 6. The only thing that kept Steve going was that he loved what he did. How did he prove this to the world? 6. Trace the journey of Steve Jobs from Apple to Next. 7. Narrate the turn of events that led Steve Jobs to return to the company Apple that he had started. 8. How does the idea of death affect Jobs' perspective on life? 9. Steve Jobs had been very close to facing death, but he was lucky enough to escape from it. Narrate this incident. 4. J.K. Rowling's speech at Harvard University on the fringe benefits of failure and the importance of imagination. Joanne Rowling, born the 31st of July 1965, also known by her pen name J.K. Rowling, is a British author and philanthropist. She wrote Harry Potter, a 7-volume children's fantasy series published from 1997 to 2007. She wanted to be a writer from an early age. She wrote her first book at the age of 6, a story about a rabbit, called Rabbit. She wrote her first novel about 7 cursed diamonds and the people who owned them. This speech was originally delivered as the commencement address at Harvard University on June 5, 2008. Her address is remarkable for the powerful message it contains. This speech is a plea to her audience to avoid the pitfalls of privilege and to use their human capability of imagination to make a life for themselves that really matters. https://www.youtube.com/watch?mark v=WHGQP8LZ36C and T=54S. The transcript of the speech. President Faust, members of the Harvard Corporation and the Board of Overseers, members of the faculty, proud parents, and, above all, graduates. The first thing I would like to say is, thank you. Not only has Harvard given me an extraordinary honor, but the weeks of fear and nausea I have endured at the thought of giving this commencement address have made me lose weight. A win-win situation. Now all I have to do is take deep breaths, squint at the red banners and convince myself that I am at the world's largest Gryffindor reunion. Delivering a commencement address is a great responsibility, or so I thought until I cast my mind back to my own graduation. The commencement speaker that day was the distinguished British philosopher Baroness Mary Warnock. Reflecting on her speech has helped me enormously in writing this one, because it turns out that I can't remember a single word she said. This liberating discovery enables me to proceed without any fear that I might inadvertently influence you to abandon promising careers in business, the law or politics for the giddy delights of becoming a gay wizard. You see? If all you remember in years to come is the gay wizard joke, I've come out ahead of Baroness Mary Warnock. Achievable goals, the first step to self-improvement. Actually, I have racked my mind and heart for what I ought to say to you today. I have asked myself what I wish I had known at my own graduation, and what important lessons I have learned in the 21 years that have expired between that day and this. I have come up with two answers. On this wonderful day when we are gathered together to celebrate your academic success, I have decided to talk to you about the benefits of failure. And as you stand on the threshold of what is sometimes called real life, I want to extol the crucial importance of imagination. These may seem quixotic or paradoxical choices, but please bear with me. Looking back at the 21-year-old that I was at graduation is a slightly uncomfortable experience for the 42-year-old that she has become. Half my lifetime ago, I was striking an uneasy balance between the ambition I had for myself and what those closest to me expected of me. I was convinced that the only thing I wanted to do, ever, was to write novels. However, my parents, both of whom came from impoverished backgrounds and neither of whom had been to college, took the view that my overactive imagination was an amusing personal quirk that would never pay a mortgage or secure a pension. I know that the irony strikes with the force of a cartoon anvil now. So, they hoped that I would take a vocational degree. I wanted to study English literature. A compromise was reached that in retrospect satisfied nobody, and I went up to study modern languages. Hardly had my parents' car rounded the corner at the end of the road than I ditched German and scuttled off down the classics corridor. I cannot remember telling my parents that I was studying classics. They might well have found out for the first time on graduation day. Of all the subjects on this planet, I think they would have been hard put to name one less useful than Greek mythology when it came to securing the keys to an executive bathroom. I would like to make it clear, in parenthesis, that I do not blame my parents for their point of view. There is an expiry date on blaming your parents for steering you in the wrong direction. The moment you are old enough to take the wheel, responsibility lies with you. What is more, I cannot criticize my parents for hoping that I would never experience poverty. They had been poor themselves, and I have since been poor, and I quite agree with them that it is not an ennobling experience. Poverty entails fear and stress and sometimes depression. It means 1,000 petty humiliations and hardships. Climbing out of poverty by your own efforts, that is indeed something on which to pride yourself, but poverty itself is romanticized only by fools. What I feared most for myself at your age was not poverty, but failure. At your age, in spite of a distinct lack of motivation at university, where I had spent far too long in the coffee bar writing stories, and far too little time at lectures, I had a knack for passing examinations, and that, for years, had been the measure of success in my life and that of my peers. I am not dull enough to suppose that because you are young, gifted, and well-educated, you have never known hardship or heartbreak. Talent and intelligence never yet inoculated anyone against the caprice of the fates, and I do not for a moment suppose that everyone here has enjoyed an existence of unruffled privilege and contentment. However, the fact that you are graduating from Harvard suggests that you are not very well acquainted with failure. You might be driven by a fear of failure quite as much as a desire for success. Indeed, your conception of failure might not be too far from the average person's idea of success. So high have you already flown. Ultimately, we all have to decide for ourselves what constitutes failure, but the world is quite eager to give you a set of criteria if you let it. So, I think it fair to say that by any conventional measure, a mere 7 years after my graduation day, I had failed on an epic scale. An exceptionally short-lived marriage had imploded, and I was jobless, a lone parent, and as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain, without being homeless. The fears that my parents had had for me, and that I had had for myself, had both come to pass, and by every usual standard, I was the biggest failure I knew. Now, I am not going to stand here and tell you that failure is fun. That period of my life was a dark one, and I had no idea that there was going to be what the press has since represented as a kind of fairy tale resolution. I had no idea then how far the tunnel extended, and for a long time, any light at the end of it was a hope rather than a reality. So why do I talk about the benefits of failure? Simply because failure meant a stripping away of the inessential. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was, and began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to me. Had I really succeeded at anything else, I might never have found the determination to succeed in the one arena I believed I truly belonged. I was set free because my greatest fear had been realized, and I was still alive, and I still had a daughter whom I adored, and I had an old typewriter. And a big idea, and so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. You might never fail on the scale I did, but some failure in life is inevitable. It is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case, you fail by default. Failure gave me an inner security that I had never attained by passing examinations. Failure taught me things about myself that I could have learned no other way. I discovered that I had a strong will, and more discipline than I had suspected. I also found out that I had friends whose value was truly above the price of rubies. The knowledge that you have emerged wiser and stronger from setbacks means that you are, ever after, secure in your ability to survive. You will never truly know yourself, or the strength of your relationships, until both have been tested by adversity. Such knowledge is a true gift, for all that it is painfully won, and it has been worth more than any qualification I ever earned. So given a time turner, I would tell my 21-year-old self that personal happiness lies in knowing that life is not a checklist of acquisition or achievement. Your qualifications, your CV, are not your life, though you will meet many people of my age and older who confuse the two. Life is difficult and complicated and beyond anyone's total control, and the humility to know that will enable you to survive its vicissitudes. Now you might think that I chose my second theme, the importance of imagination, because of the part it played in rebuilding my life, but that is not wholly so. Though I personally will defend the value of bedtime stories to my last gasp, I have learned to value imagination in a much broader sense. Imagination is not only the uniquely human capacity to envision that which is not, and therefore the fount of all invention and innovation. In its arguably most transformative and revelatory capacity, it is the power that enables us to empathize with humans whose experiences we have never shared. One of the greatest formative experiences of my life preceded Harry Potter, though it informed much of what I subsequently wrote in those books. This revelation came in the form of one of my earliest day jobs. Though I was sloping off to write stories during my lunch hours, I paid the rent in my early 20s by working at the African Research Department at Amnesty International's headquarters in London. There in my little office I read hastily scribbled letters smuggled out of totalitarian regimes by men and women who were risking imprisonment to inform the outside world of what was happening to them. I saw photographs of those who had disappeared without trace, sent to Amnesty by their desperate families and friends. I read the testimony of torture victims and saw pictures of their injuries. I opened handwritten, eyewitness accounts of summary trials and executions, of kidnappings and rapes. Many of my co-workers were ex-political prisoners, people who had been displaced from their homes or fled into exile because they had the temerity to speak against their governments. Visitors to our offices included those who had come to give information or to try and find out what had happened to those they had left behind. I shall never forget the African torture victim, a young man no older than I was at the time, who had become mentally ill after all he had endured in his homeland. He trembled uncontrollably as he spoke into a video camera about the brutality inflicted upon him. He was a foot taller than I was, and seemed as fragile as a child. I was given the job of escorting him back to the underground station afterwards, and this man whose life had been shattered by cruelty took my hand with exquisite courtesy, and wished me future happiness. And as long as I live, I shall remember walking along an empty corridor and suddenly hearing, from behind a closed door, a scream of pain and horror such as I have never heard since. The door opened, and the researcher poked out her head and told me to run and make a hot drink for the young man sitting with her. She had just had to give him the news that in retaliation for his own outspokenness against his country's regime, his mother had been seized and executed. Every day of my working week in my early 20s, I was reminded how incredibly fortunate I was to live in a country with a democratically elected government, where legal representation and a public trial were the rights of everyone. Every day, I saw more evidence about the evils humankind will inflict on their fellow humans to gain or maintain power. I began to have nightmares, literal nightmares, about some of the things I saw, heard, and read. And yet I also learned more about human goodness at Amnesty International than I had ever known before. Amnesty mobilizes thousands of people who have never been tortured or imprisoned for their beliefs to act on behalf of those who have. The power of human empathy, leading to collective action, saves lives and frees prisoners. Ordinary people, whose personal well-being and security are assured, join together in huge numbers to save people they do not know and will never meet. My small participation in that process was one of the most humbling and inspiring experiences of my life. Unlike any other creature on this planet, humans can learn and understand without having experienced. They can think themselves into other people's places. Of course, this is a power, like my brand of fictional magic, that is morally neutral. One might use such an ability to manipulate or control, just as much as to understand or sympathize. And many prefer not to exercise their imaginations at all. They choose to remain comfortably within the bounds of their own experience, never troubling to wonder how it would feel to have been born other than they are. They can refuse to hear screams or to peer inside cages. They can close their minds and hearts to any suffering that does not touch them personally. They can refuse to know. I might be tempted to envy people who can live that way, except that I do not think they have any fewer nightmares than I do. Choosing to live in narrow spaces leads to a form of mental agoraphobia, and that brings its own terrors. I think the willfully unimaginative see more monsters. They are often more afraid. What is more, those who choose not to empathize enable real monsters. 4. Without ever committing an act of outright evil ourselves, we collude with it. Through our own apathy. One of the many things I learned at the end of that classics corridor down which I ventured at the age of 18, in search of something I could not then define, was this, written by the Greek author Plutarch: what we achieve inwardly will change outer reality. That is an astonishing statement, and yet proven 1,000 times every day of our lives. It expresses, in part, our inescapable connection with the outside world, the fact that we touch other people's lives simply by existing. But how much more are you, Harvard graduates of 2008, likely to touch other people's lives? Your intelligence, your capacity for hard work, the education you have earned and received, give you unique status and unique responsibilities. Even your nationality sets you apart. The great majority of you belong to the world's only remaining superpower. The way you vote, the way you live, the way you protest, the pressure you bring to bear on your government, has an impact way beyond your borders. That is your privilege and your burden. If you choose to use your status and influence to raise your voice on behalf of those who have no voice, if you choose to identify not only with the powerful, but with the powerless, if you retain the ability to imagine yourself into the lives of those who do not have your advantages, then it will not only be your proud families who celebrate your existence, but thousands and millions of people whose reality you have helped change. We do not need magic to change the world. We carry all the power we need inside ourselves already. We have the power to imagine better. I am nearly finished. I have one last hope for you, which is something that I already had at 21. The friends with whom I sat on graduation day have been my friends for life. They are my children's godparents, the people to whom I've been able to turn in times of trouble, people who have been kind enough not to sue me when I took their names for Death Eaters. At our graduation we were bound by enormous affection, by our shared experience of a time that could never come again, and, of course, by the knowledge that we held certain photographic evidence that would be exceptionally valuable if any of us ran for Prime Minister. So today, I wish you nothing better than similar friendships. And tomorrow, I hope that even if you remember not a single word of mine, you remember those of Seneca, another of those old Romans I met when I fled down the classics corridor, in retreat from career ladders, in search of ancient wisdom. As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. I wish you all very good lives. Thank you very much. Glossary 1. Gryffindor. In the Harry Potter series, is one of the 4 houses of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, founded by Godric Gryffindor. 2. Baroness Mary Warnock, an English philosopher of morality, education, and mind. 3. Threshold. The place or point of beginning, place of entry. 4. Quixotic. Extremely idealistic, unrealistic and impractical. Contradictory. 5. Paradoxical. Poor, make a person or area poor. Run hurriedly with short quick steps. 6. Impoverished. 7. Scuttled. 8. Inoculated. 9. Caprice. Vaccinated. A sudden change of mood or behavior, whim. 10. Imploded. Collapse. 11. Vicissitudes. 12. Totalitarian. A change of circumstances or fortune, alteration. A system of government that is centralized and dictatorial. Authoritarian. Extreme or irrational fear of entering open or crowded places, of leaving one's own home. 13. Agoraphobia. Comprehension. A. Classroom activity. 1. Why does J.K. Rowling call her chance to give a commencement address as a win-win situation? 2. During Rowling's graduation ceremony, the commencement speaker was the British philosopher. 3. The 2 themes that J.K. Rowling addressed at the university were about benefits of failure and importance of imagination. True, false. 4. What was it that J.K. Rowling was convinced that she ever wanted to do in life? 5. J.K. Rowling's parents were graduates. True, false. 6. J.K. Rowling did not fear poverty, but she feared. 7. J.K. Rowling's parents learned that she had been studying classics on the A. Inauguration day. B. Graduation day. 7. Rowling ventured into the classic corridors when she was at the age of 8. The statement, "What we achieve inwardly will change outer reality," is written by the Greek author. B. Answer the following questions in about a page each. 1. In her younger days, what was J.K. Rowling's ambition and how did she achieve it against her parents' will? 2. Narrate J.K. Rowling's story of failure and how she overcame that. 3. How did the importance of imagination help Rowling to rebuild her life? 4. Discuss the experiences of Rowling while she was working at the African Research Department at Amnesty International's headquarters in London. 5. What are the key lessons in J.K. Rowling's speech? 6. What, according to Rowling, is imagination and what is its value? 7. What is J.K. Rowling's biggest fear? Five. Subroto Bagchi's Go Kiss the World inspirational speech. Subroto Bagchi, born the 31st of May 1959, is an Indian entrepreneur and business leader. He is the co-founder of Mindtree, an Indian technology MNC. Bagchi was born to Makan Gopal Bagchi and Lavanya Prova Bagchi in Patnagar, Odisha, where his father was a junior government servant. He studied political science at Utkal University. The transcript given here is the speech delivered by Subroto Bagchi to the class of 2006 at the IIM, Bangalore. Here, he talks about the words of wisdom and the lessons taught to him by his parents. The lessons are directed at lighting the meaning of success and are related to the events from Bagchi's life. The transcript of the speech. I was the last child of a small-time government servant in a family of 5 brothers. My earliest memory of my father is as that of a district employment officer in Koraput, Orissa. It was, and remains as back of beyond as you can imagine. There was no electricity, no primary school nearby, and water did not flow out of a tap. As a result, I did not go to school until the age of 8. I was homeschooled. My father used to get transferred every year. The family belongings fit into the back of a jeep, so the family moved from place to place, and without any trouble, my mother would set up an establishment and get us going. Raised by a widow who had come as a refugee from the then East Bengal, she was a matriculate when she married my father. My parents set the foundation of my life in the value system, which makes me what I am today and largely defines what success means to me today. As district employment officer, my father was given a jeep by the government. There was no garage in the office, so the jeep was parked in our house. My father refused to use it to commute to the office. He told us that the jeep is an expensive resource given by the government. He reiterated to us that it was not his jeep, but the government's jeep. Insisting that he would use it only to tour the interiors, he would walk to his office on normal days. He also made sure that we never sat in the government jeep. We could sit in it only when it was stationary. That was our early childhood lesson in governance. A lesson that corporate managers learn the hard way, some never do. The driver of the Jeep was treated with respect due to any other member of my father's office. As small children, we were taught not to call him by his name. We had to use the suffix "dada" whenever we were to refer to him in public or private. When I grew up to own a car and a driver by the name of Raju was appointed, I repeated the lesson to my two small daughters. They have, as a result, grown up to call Raju uncle, very different from many of their friends who refer to their family driver as my driver. When I hear that term from a school or college-going person, I cringe. To me, the lesson was significant. You treat small people with more respect than how you treat big people. It is more important to respect your subordinates than your superiors. Our day used to start with the family huddling around my mother's chula, an earthen fireplace she would build at each place of posting where she would cook for the family. There was neither gas nor electrical stoves. The morning routine started with tea. As the brew was served, Father would ask us to read aloud the editorial page of the Statesman's Mofussil edition, delivered one day late. We did not understand much of what we were reading, but the ritual was meant for us to know that the world was larger than Koraput district, and the English I speak today, despite having studied in an Oriya medium school, has to do with that routine. After reading the newspaper aloud, we were told to fold it neatly. Father taught us a simple lesson. He used to say, you should leave your newspaper in your toilet, the way you expect to find it. That lesson was about showing consideration to others. Business begins and ends with that simple precept. Being small children, we were always enamored with advertisements in the newspaper for transistor radios. We did not have one. We saw other people having radios in their homes, and each time there was an advertisement of Philips, Murphy or Bush radios, we would ask Father when we could get one. Each time, my father would reply that we did not need one because he already had 5 radios, alluding to his 5 sons. Nonetheless, we learned that it is important not to measure personal success and sense of well-being through material possessions. Government houses seldom came with fences. Mother and I collected twigs and built a small fence. After lunch, my mother would never sleep. She would take her kitchen utensils, and with those she and I would dig the rocky, white ant-infested surrounding. We planted flowering bushes. The white ants destroyed them. My mother brought ash from her chula and mixed it in the earth, and we planted the seedlings all over again. This time, they bloomed. At that time, my father's transfer order came. A few neighbors told my mother why she was taking so much pain to beautify a government house, why she was planting seeds that would only benefit the next occupant. My mother replied that it did not matter to her that she would not see the flowers in full bloom. She said, I have to create a bloom in a desert, and whenever I am given a new place, I must leave it more beautiful than what I had inherited. That was my first lesson in success. It is not about what you create for yourself, it is what you leave behind that defines success. My mother began developing a cataract in her eyes when I was very small. At that time, the eldest among my brothers got a teaching job at the university in Bhubaneswar and had to prepare for the civil services examination. So it was decided that my mother would move to cook for him, and, as her appendage, I had to move too. For the first time in my life, I saw electricity in homes and water coming out of a tap. It was around 1965 and the country was going to war with Pakistan. My mother was having problems reading, and, in any case, being Bengali, she did not know the Oriya script. So, in addition to my daily chores, my job was to read her the local newspaper, end to end. That created in me a sense of connectedness with a larger world. I began taking interest in many different things. While reading out news about the war, I felt that I was fighting the war myself. She and I discussed the daily news and built a bond with the larger universe. In it, we became part of a larger reality. Till date, I measure my success in terms of that sense of larger connectedness. Meanwhile, the war raged in India was fighting on both fronts. Lal Bahadur Shastri, the then Prime Minister, coined the term Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, and galvanized the nation into patriotic fervor. Other than reading out the newspaper to my mother, I had no clue about how I could be part of the action. So, after reading her the newspaper, every day I would land up near the university's water tank, which served the community. I would spend hours under it, imagining that there could be spies who would come to poison the water and I had to watch for them. I would daydream about catching one and how the next day I would be featured in the newspaper. Unfortunately for me, the spies at war ignored the sleepy town of Bhubaneswar and I never got a chance to catch one in action. Yet, that act unlocked my imagination. Imagination is everything. If we can imagine a future, we can create it. If we can create that future, others will live in it. That is the essence of success. Over the next few years, my mother's eyesight dimmed, but in me she created a larger vision, a vision with which I continue to see the world, and I sense, through my eyes, she was seeing too. As the next few years unfolded, her vision deteriorated and she was operated for cataract. I remember, when she returned after her operation and she saw my face clearly for the first time, she was astonished. She said, "Oh my God, I did not know you were so fair." I remain mighty pleased with that adulation even till date. Within weeks of getting her sight back, she developed a corneal ulcer and, overnight, became blind in both eyes. That was 1969. She died in 2002. In all those 32 years of living with blindness, she never complained about her fate even once. Curious to know what she saw with blind eyes, I asked her once if she sees darkness. She replied, "No, I do not see darkness. I only see light even with my eyes closed." Until she was 80 years of age, she did her morning yoga every day, swept her own room and washed her own clothes. To me, success is about the sense of independence. It is about not seeing the world, but seeing the light. Over the many intervening years, I grew up, studied, joined the industry and began to carve my life's own journey. I began my life as a clerk in a government office, went on to become a management trainee with the DCM Group and eventually found my life's calling with the IT industry when fourth-generation computers came to India in 1981. Life took me places. I worked with outstanding people, challenging assignments and traveled all over the world. In 1992, while I was posted in the U.S., I learned that my father, living a retired life with my eldest brother, had suffered a third-degree burn injury and was admitted in the Safdarjung Hospital in Delhi. I flew back to attend to him. He remained for a few days in critical stage, bandaged from neck to toe. The Safdarjung Hospital is a cockroach-infested, dirty, inhuman place. The overworked, under-resourced sisters in the burn ward are both victims and perpetrators of dehumanized life at its worst. One morning, while attending to my father, I realized that the blood bottle was empty and fearing that air would go into his vein, I asked the attending nurse to change it. She bluntly told me to do it myself. In that horrible theater of death, I was in pain and frustration and anger. Finally, when she relented and came, my father opened his eyes and murmured to her, "Why have you not gone home yet?" Here was a man on his deathbed but more concerned about the overworked nurse than his own state. I was stunned at his stoic self. There I learnt that there is no limit to how concerned you can be for another human being and what the limit of inclusion is you can create. My father died the next day. He was a man whose success was defined by his principles, his frugality, his universalism, and his sense of inclusion. Above all, he taught me that success is your ability to rise above your discomfort, whatever may be your current state. You can, if you want, raise your consciousness above your immediate surroundings. Success is not about building material comforts, the transistor that he never could buy or the house that he never owned. His success was about the legacy he left, the mimetic continuity of his ideals that grew beyond the smallness of an ill-paid, unrecognized government servant's world. My father was a fervent believer in the British Raj. He sincerely doubted the capability of the post-independence Indian political parties to govern the country. To him, the lowering of the Union Jack was a sad event. My mother was the exact opposite. When Subhash Bose quit the Indian National Congress and came to Dhaka, my mother, then a schoolgirl, garlanded him. She learned to spin khadi and joined an underground movement that trained her in using daggers and swords. Consequently, our household saw diversity in the political outlook of the two. On major issues concerning the world, the old man and the old lady had differing opinions. In them, we learnt the power of disagreements, of dialogue, and the essence of living with diversity in thinking. Success is not about the ability to create a definitive dogmatic end state. It is about the unfolding of thought processes, of dialogue and continuum. 2 years back, at the age of 82, Mother had a paralytic stroke and was lying in a government hospital in Bhubaneswar. I flew down from the U.S. where I was serving my second stint to see her. I spent 2 weeks with her in the hospital as she remained in a paralytic state. She was neither getting better nor moving on. Eventually I had to return to work. While leaving her behind, I kissed her face. In that paralytic state and a garbled voice, she said, "Why are you kissing me? Go kiss the world." Her river was nearing its journey, at the confluence of life and death. This woman who came to India as a refugee, raised by a widowed mother, no more educated than high school, married to an anonymous government servant whose last salary was rupees 300, robbed of her eyesight by fate and crowned by adversity, was telling me to go and kiss the world. Success to me is about vision. It is the ability to rise above the immediacy of pain. It is about imagination. It is about sensitivity to small people. It is about building inclusion. It is about connectedness to a larger world existence. It is about personal tenacity. It is about giving back more to life than you take out of it. It is about creating extraordinary success with ordinary lives. Thank you very much. I wish you good luck and Godspeed. Go, kiss the world. Here is a link to one of the speeches of Subroto Bagchi, a commencement speech delivered to the graduating students of College of Engineering at the University of Florida. https://youtube.be/weo971xrhjk. Glossary. 1. Precept: a general rule intended to regulate behavior or thought. 2. Enamored, in love with, admiration. 3. Mofussil: the provincial or rural districts of India. 4. Appendage: a thing that is added or attached to something larger, addition. 5. Galvanized: to cause people to become so excited or concerned about an issue. 6. Perpetrators: a person who carries out a harmful, illegal, or immoral act. 7. Frugality: the quality of being economical with money or food, thriftiness. 8. Universalism, loyalty to and concern for others without regard to national or other allegiances, a belief in one fundamental truth. 9. Tenacity, the quality or fact of being very determined, determination. Comprehension. A. Practice comprehension. 1. Subroto Bagchi's father worked as a in Koraput, Orissa. 2. Subroto's mother was a refugee from father before she married his. 3. How many siblings did Subroto Bagchi have? 3. Subroto and his brothers used to use the suffix driver to refer to their. 4. What is a chula? 5. Subroto had studied in medium school. 6. The first lesson in success taught by Subroto's mother was not about what you create for yourself, but what you leave behind. True or false? 7. What was the first thing that Subroto Bagchi's mother built at every new place they lived? 8. As children, what fascinated the speaker and his siblings? 9. We do not need a house of our own. I already own 5 houses. What did Bagchi's father refer to as 5 houses? 9. What was Subroto Bagchi's first job? 7. In Bhubaneswar, which routine helped Subroto stay connected with the larger world? 10. What 3 things did the speaker's mother continue to do even after she went blind? 8. Lal Bahadur Shastri coined the term nation into patriotic fervor to galvanize the. 9. Subroto's mother died in the year. 10. What were the words uttered by Subroto's dying mother when he kissed her? 11. What was the epilogue of Subroto's speech? B. Answer the following questions in about a page each. 1. Describe Subroto Bagchi's life as a child. 2. What are the lessons taught by Subroto's father? 3. What lessons did the narrator's mother teach the children? 4. How was the state of Koraput as remembered by Bagchi? 5. How did Bagchi learn the importance of imagination? 5. Explain the difference in Subroto's parents' ideology. 6. Why do you think Subroto Bagchi's children were not allowed to call their driver by his name? 7. What according to Subroto Bagchi are the benefits of failure? 8. Explain the incidents that taught the speaker to learn not to measure personal success and the sense of well-being through material possessions. 9. Go Kiss the World speech contain lessons of life. Elucidate this. 10. According to Bagchi, what is success? How does the story exemplify his success story? Points to remember. 1. Listening to speeches enables you to improve your language and speaking skills. 2. Speeches help us to improve our vocabulary, learn intonation and tone of the sentence. 3. Can improve our comprehensive skill by listening to the speeches, understanding them and answering the questions given after that. Acknowledgement. Source: http://pib.nic.in/vivekananda/speechasatchicago.htm www.gandhiserve.org. Source: http://subrotobagchi.mindtree.com/eem-bang